Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Movement is Medicine podcast. This is episode 13. I'm your host, Kevin Carr, with my amazing and tardy co-host, Brendan
tardy.
Vyrick.
I was doing
Not
jumping
that bad.
jacks as my punishment.
Yeah,
Seated jumping
we're building
jacks.
mental toughness. We're building mental toughness in you for being late.
Go listen to episode
12. But hey, Brandon, you weren't that late. I shouldn't give you that much trouble. Plus, you were training the youth of America to be better,
right. To be better human beings.
So it's
right.
it's okay.
Trying to change a culture, Kevin. I'm trying to change a culture. All right.
You're a culture coach.
I'm a culture coach. Coach. Actually, Coach Sims introduced me as strength coach and culture coach. That's my my new job.
Why don't you talk about kind of like what you're instituting this season?
Oh, so this season, well, give everyone a little background. I worked with a football team last year as their strength and conditioning coach. We had 110 kids start. That's including varsity, freshman, and JV. By the end of the year, we were probably down to 90, maybe 85. And the biggest issue we had was culture, accountability, leadership, people showing up late, not doing what they're supposed to do. And this year, Coach Sims and I sat down and had a discussion. And he just blatantly asked me, how do we make leaders? And I was like, oh, man, I have no idea, actually. I never thought of it like
$1 million question.
$1 million question, Coach Sims. And so we talked it out. It took me about an hour and a half to kind of come up with this thought process that I am now implementing, but I'm calling it the 4 IONs. So there is education, competition, recognition, and then termination. So
wait, what does ION stand for?
Nothing. They just all end in ION.
Oh, okay. I got it.
The 4 IONs.
Sorry.
That's okay.
One right over my head.
Right over your head. Yeah, it's all that Riesling you just drank.
Yeah.
So, the first one, education. So this is going to grab our kids who are already kind of self-motivated, who just need a little bit of guidance. They just need a little bit of extra, kick to keep doing what they're doing and to become that leader that's inside of them. So they already have it built in. We just need to get it out of them. That's going to be education. The second piece of this is competition. So we've got kids who are not necessarily self-driven, and they're not driven by recognition or affirmation. They could care less. So I've got one individual in mind that when the lights come on and there's some sort of competition, no matter what it is, he's going all out. But other than that, I can't get him to do anything. These are the Lawrence Taylors of the world. And then the third one is recognition. So there's kids on every athletic team that are never going to play, but they're a very important part of the team. They practice hard. They show up every day. They give full effort, and they don't have the ability, and that's okay. They play special teams. They do a lot of other functions on the team, and I want them to be recognized, right? Because they don't get enough recognition. And recognition and affirmations is a great way to build confidence and to call it out in front of the team. And then the last one is termination. So this is last year, there was a few kids that we should have cut. And football usually doesn't have cuts. You keep everybody. But when you have 110 kids, that's a lot of resources. And we only have so much and so many coaches and so much energy that we let a lot of poor habits, a lot of bad things kind of spread throughout, kind of like the cancers of the group. We should have cut that fat loose. And this year, we're going to use competition and recognition and education as a way to kind of filter out some of those kids even more, and be a little bit quicker to, terminate or cut somebody who needs to be cut. All other sports have cuts except for football. And I was talking to Coach Sims about it. I said, we should be like everybody else. Like in football, you only need 15 players to have a team, and you only need 11 to play. So we don't need 110. So yeah, we want everyone there, but if somebody's not a part of the first three or a part of the culture we're trying to build, and they're bringing everybody down and they just don't have the character, we're going to have to cut that individual loose. So I'm building out these systems now, a system for, you know how I like systems. I'm building out a system for
involved.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of spreadsheets. But I'm building out this system and I'm calling it the 4 IONs, and we'll see what happens. I got 4 more months to implement it, and today was actually the first day.
All right, we'll check back in then after the season to get the recap.
Yep. So, and you were just in Chicago?
Yeah, I just taught at what was the most unbelievable health club I have ever seen in my entire life. And I will go on a limb and say I've probably been to more gyms than probably just about anybody, just given CFSC. Like I've visited more gyms around the world and seen the most amazing facilities, and I've also seen some pretty terrible facilities. But this place,
the good comes with the bad.
Club, the East Bank Club in Chicago is one of the most impressive places I've ever seen in my entire life. It is literally an entire city block, and you could live there because there is a restaurant that's always open. There is obviously a massive gym and health club and track and indoor tennis and indoor golf and a pool. The pool at the top is like a Vegas pool party. There's like multiple bars and like lounge chairs and it's like a party. Like I said, indoor track. It's crazy. There's even co-working space and a salon and a daycare. It's like everything you need. You could literally stay there. It's like a city country club for health. So I did a workshop there, just like kind of an in-service for the staff. And it was really, really good. Awesome group of people there, really great coaches, really into it, wanted to learn. So it was a fun experience. And that kind of caps off my traveling for the near future now.
Baby's due in 1 month.
We're just about into the drop zone, right?
Yeah. Is it 1 month? Are we at a month yet?
We're in between 5 and 4 weeks. Yeah. So this is
all right.
This is a critical time. So I won't be going anywhere.
Critical.
But this was a very, very good workshop. So I highly recommend people to check that place out if they're in Chicago. Pretty cool.
What's it called again?
So the East Bank Club.
East Bank Club. East Bank Club. Sounds like you could just stay there all day. And
I honestly would have, to be honest. I did stay there all day, but I'd probably just stay there forever if they let me. But no, we have some good stuff today. I know we haven't done an interview in a couple weeks because we kind of had a backlog. We had Nolan Sana on last week, which was fun to talk to them. And now we're back on our routine. And this is, we had listed out some topics previously, and this was a good one that you threw in there, kind of talking about like one of those cliches in fitness. And what do we always say? Cliches are cliches because they're true. But one thing that you brought up is that you always hear the saying, in the fitness industry or in physical therapy, anything really, where they say the number one thing you have to do is meet the client where they're at. And what does that actually mean? Because I think a lot of people do say that, but from an actual practical application standpoint, because it's obviously a good thing to say and a good thing to do, but from a practical application standpoint, what does that actually mean? How do you communicate? How do you program? What do you actually do to ensure that you're doing that? Because it could be one thing to say it, but to actually talk about what goes into it is really important.
So for me, it goes into steps, or what are my steps to meeting the client where they're at. And again, you mentioned that the reason why I brought this topic up is because so many people say it, but they don't define it and they don't explain what they mean by that. So I wanted to elaborate, and I figured it'd make a really good podcast. So for me, the first most important thing about meeting somebody where they're at is finding out their why or their goals. So I like the 5 whys, where you say, like, why are you here? What brought you here? Like, why are you reaching out to me? Well, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, great. That's awesome. I think I could definitely help you with that. But like, why is that important to you? Oh, well, I'm turning 40 now. I gained 30 pounds over COVID, and I had 10 pounds before that I needed to lose. And my doctor recently, I saw him or her, and they gave me some blood work that said I'm pre-diabetic. Oh, okay. So now we're getting more of the story, and say, well, okay, well, why is it important for you to not be pre-diabetic, or to not go backwards, or go, and they go into their next why, like, well, I have two kids that are teenagers, and I need to be able to do this, or my husband and I want to retire in the next 5 years, and I want to be able to travel the world. Like, so, like, we keep getting deeper and deeper, and you just keep asking why until there's really nothing left. So yes, you're asking for goals and what brought you here, but you got to find out their why and their purpose. Number one,
having conversations like that and being really good at conversations like that is what makes you a great coach. Being able to take the time, not rush an interview, even if it takes the majority of that first session when you meet them, if you're just talking. That's how you build trust with them to begin with. And that's how you figure out, when you say meet them where they're at, that's how you figure out where at is, right? Being able to ask really good questions. I think when you're a young coach, you're not comfortable with those interviews. You're just happy to have a client. And you are so consumed probably at that point with showing them how smart you are, or showing them why you can help them, because you're like, oh, I can definitely help this person, that you don't actually take the time to have a conversation with the individual and figure out where they're coming from. And so you said, like, ask the whys. And like I always tell people, like, have a really good set of intake questions that you ask consistently. And so in that presentation I did the other day in Chicago, I listed off some of the ones I always ask. And I go with the whole, the Mark Fisher approach that they taught us, like, always ask open-ended questions, because they can't just answer yes or no, and then it'll lead to you asking better questions after. So, like, you could ask the next why if they answer long-windedly about whatever their history is. So, like, I'll say, tell me about some of your past experiences with exercise, or what are your expectations for a great workout? Because you realize their expectations or past experiences are probably vastly different than what you're providing or what your expectation is. They could be coming from no exercise. They could be coming from CrossFit. They could be coming from water aerobics. They could be coming from Pilates. They could be coming from spinning. They could have got hurt previously. They could think that to work out, they have to be in a pile of sweat and drenched and exhausted and sore. Or they could think that, like, a good workout is just taking a walk or gardening, right? So, like, you don't know where at is until you ask that. What would be your ideal outcome with this training experience, and where do you want to be a year from now? So it speaks to what they want and where they want to get to. If they say, hey, I just want to feel a little bit better, I want my cholesterol to be lower, I want to be able to play with my kids, or do they say, like, I want to be super freaking jacked, I want to make my ex-girlfriend really jealous? Like,
I've heard
it's
it.
very
I've heard
different
people
training
say
experience.
that.
I've 100% heard that.
Yeah, I'm training someone right now.
Yeah. Like, so you have to know, like, what fuels them. What do you feel like is your biggest limiting factor from doing that right now? Because it could be that they just don't have somewhere to train, or they don't know what they're doing. Or it could be like, no, it's my job. I work like 60 hours a week. And then you're like, okay, my expectations to how we can train have just changed. I don't get enough sleep. It's my kids. It's my back pain. It could be a lot of different things. And I'll say, in what way, this was my question for people in pain, in what way does your pain affect your daily life? But it could be, in what way does you being out of shape affect your daily life? In what way does you being too weak affect your ability to participate in sports that you like? So you could reframe it to whatever their instance is, because then you find out very clearly what they want. And you saying, like, why are you here, right, is really powerful, probably more than we think, because realize how expensive personal training is. Like, I wouldn't want to pay for myself.
Me either. I wouldn't pay $100 an hour to train with me.
Exactly. So if they're going to pay that much money, if they're going to make that large of an economic commitment for a luxury item, there's clearly a large motivating factor behind it. It's not really something most people take lightly in purchasing. So they might say, I just want to be a little more fit. But then when you were asking okay, but why do you want to do this? Well, because I don't want to die before my grandkids get old enough for me to hang out with them.
That's a lot. That's a lot. When you say that out loud, that's a lot different than losing 10 pounds, right? I just don't want to die young. Oh my God, that's a really deep realization and a really strong carrot to dangle. As opposed to let's lose that 10 pounds, right? And it's no, we're doing this because we want to be there for the people we love when we get older. It's a whole different deep mindset, and having that kind of knowledge makes you a better coach.
Absolutely.
I will add to we talked about this before we came on, was that a big thing I did when I was younger is I would impart my goals on them, thinking that I knew best for them. So, you look like you need to lose 20 pounds. You look like you need this, you need that, and you must want this, right? If you're coming to me. So I would impart my assumptions and what I believe should be their goals onto them without even asking, and just start training them. So that is definitely not the route you want to go, because what you think they want is most likely not what they want. Also, I will say, I remember hearing Dan John say this once, that be careful when you ask. If you only ask once, this is why it's important to ask multiple whys. If you only ask them one time, they're most likely going to tell you what they think you want to hear, right? So what would my strength coach or my personal trainer want me to say? Oh yeah, I want to lose weight and build muscle and feel healthier, right? That's what they expect that you want them to say. Because then if I don't ask another why, I'm just going to go, all right, awesome. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. So let's go, right? No, you need to dig deeper than that, because they're going to tell you what you want to hear the first time. But if you go further than that, they are then going to open up and continue down that path of what actually brought them in there, not what do they think you want to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because you forget that they're always they're trying to please you. Most people coming to a trainer are somewhat intimidated by coming in to see you or coming to the gym. So they're like, oh, what's this jack guy I want to hear? Yeah, I want to deadlift. I definitely want to deadlift. Yeah. I heard deadlifting's great. I want to deadlift 315. And in reality, that doesn't really matter to them, nor does it might not help them get to their goals at all. It could, but they're just going to say what they think you want to hear in hopes of getting through the uncomfortable, probably intake conversation for them as well.
Right. Yes, and everybody wants validation. So you've got to try to clear the slate and not go for the validating answer there. So part one, or step one, for meeting somebody where they're at, is to find out their why or their goals, and to ask open-ended, deep questions. Okay. We good there?
Yeah.
Okay. So number two is a little bit quicker. It's equipment access. Now, if they're coming to you, this is a moot point, so you can skip this one. So if they're coming to MBSC, we know what equipment we have access to. But you might, they're not with you the other 3 days, right? Or the other 4 days a week. So what equipment do you have access to? So I ask this, the healthcare company that I consult with, we're all virtual. So you need to tell me, or I need to ask you, do you have mini bands? Do you have dumbbells? Do you have adjustable dumbbells? What are those weights? Do you have access to a barbell? What kind of weather do you have outside? Can you run year round? Is there winter? You can't run year round. Do you have access to the hotel gym, work gym? Do you literally have nothing but a stability ball? That will dictate a lot, if not all, of my programming. I could write you what I deem to be the perfect program for your goals and what you told me. But if you're like, well, I don't have dumbbells, I don't have mini bands, I don't have any of this, then the program's crap. It's
Doesn't matter.
useless. So I need to know what equipment you have access to, and if you don't, what are you willing to buy economically, or what do you have space for? I can't have you buy a barbell and a rack if you live in a one-bedroom apartment, but we can buy sliders and mini bands and yoga blocks and stability balls. What are they willing to purchase if they don't have anything? What do they have access to, and when? That's going to be very important. If you don't have access to it all week long and you can only go to use it once a week, then that changes the program again. So sometimes I write programs where we have one workout at home, one workout at the work gym, and then one workout at the gym. So number 2 for me, if they're not coming to you, so this is anyone who's doing online training or in-home training or any of that, it's what access do you have to equipment, if any at all?
That's huge because, again, whether you're talking about programming for people who you see every day, everything's determined by logistics and equipment availability. Even with the equipment we have at MDSC, we don't program stuff in groups because I'm like, well, I don't have 12 of them. Right. Or it takes up too much floor space. Landmines are a great example. We only program them one day a week, and we do all the exercises on one day with the landmine, whether it's press or something like that. Or for lunge, we're hey, we're using it today because it takes up a bunch of floor footprint and it makes a mess and stuff. So it's again, even in a normal group setting or a normal training setting, that's true. And then at home, another thing that's similar to kind of the equipment, and I've learned from doing homework exercises with people in the rehab setting, is even if they have equipment, what are they willing to do?
Yeah, well, so you're stealing my thunder on number 3.
Was that number 3?
Yeah, number 3. Number 3 is your commitment.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll go right into that.
Okay, all right. So number 2 is equipment access and logistics. All right, so now we can get into what's a realistic commitment. What homework are you actually gonna do? Not what you think you should do, or what the media is telling you to do, or what the CDC tells you to do, or what I'm going to tell you to do. What are you actually willing to commit to? So take it away, since you
I ruined it.
Ruined it. No, you didn't ruin it.
Well, I
were going to get to it
anyways. I remember early on for you and I, when we had rehab clients, we'd send them home with at-home programs with 15 exercises. It'd be an 8x10 sheet, both sides of this and this. And they'd come back and be like, yeah, sure, I did it. Or they're better clients who are honest with you, I didn't do any of this shit. And so what you learn really early on is even what they're willing to do with you in the gym, because you have them in front of you for an hour, they'll do exactly what you say. At home, their willpower is so much lower because you're not standing there, and there's the TV and there's their life and there's all these other things. It's not a perfect training setting. They're on their carpet in their living room. So I give them 2 exercises, 3 exercises. And then eventually, if I get them to build an actual full exercise at home habit, great. They can build we can do a whole training program, and that is the ultimate goal. But in reality, most people have a very low willingness, at least early on, to commit to a lot at home. Yes, there's a lot of clients, just the people who are really over the top, who want to do every little thing. But again, they're definitely the rarity.
Yeah, they don't pay your bills.
No, it's
the people who train 6 days a week don't usually pay your bills because they already train 6 days a week. They don't need you.
Yeah, it's the people who are I did it once. I did a few reps the other day while I was watching Netflix, and I stretched, kind of stretched. And
I pay you so that you can do it for me.
Yeah, so I literally am always so now the question I ask, what are you actually willing to do? How much time will you commit? And then reduce it by what they say, because generally they're, again, saying what they think you want to hear. And yes. Well, just do these 2 exercises really well.
Yeah. And a caveat to that is, so when you ask this third question, what are you willing to commit to? This will lead either to the next part, or it leads into a different discussion, because now when you tell me you want to lose 20 pounds before your wedding in the next 3 months, but you can only work out 2 days a week for 20 minutes, and that you're not willing to change your eating habits, we need to change the goal, or we need to change the commitment. So this leads to a better discussion, and we'll call them expectations. So we use that word a few times. So our expectations need to change, because I'll say, well, you got to change at least some of your diet, and you got to work out at least 30 minutes at a high intensity 3 days a week, and maybe you can lose 10 pounds. I'm going to just be completely upfront and honest and say, well, what do you want to do? So we either commit more, you change your nutrition, or we change the goal, because I'm not a miracle worker. Like, this is, I'm going to do my best, and it sounds like you're going to do your best, but I know for sure that that's not going to work. And so, it just keeps leading to, like you said, you have to have these discussions, and you have to get really, really good at it, and you got to do a lot of them. So number 3 is what's the realistic commitment, and are the expectations correct?
Yep. It reminds me of 1 Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard.
Yep, Ken Blanchard. Yep.
I love that book because you can read it in an hour. And so they talk about like goal setting. They say like set expectations. Then after you go through, give feedback, and then either reset expectations or reset goals. And so like you can front load that again and say like, okay, if this is your goal, these are the expectations. Do we agree on these are the expectations of what we're going to do to get to that goal? Like, have that conversation. It doesn't have to be that direct with the client, to say like, hey, if you want to lose 20 pounds, these are the behaviors. It's very easy as a coach. Like if we said, hey, what we're going to do in the next 6 months is you're going to track your calories, or you're going to just do something to adjust your diet to accommodate that goal. If it's weight loss, reduce your caloric intake, protein, whatever. We're going to increase your step count, make sure you're getting like 7,000 steps a day, and you're going to consistently work out 3 days a week. Like I can reasonably, we're going to get you to your goal. Like, but the problem is most people don't do that. And so when they don't, like, the worst thing is when the client's like, well, why didn't I get better? And you're like, well, remember the expectations we discussed? And again, that doesn't mean that person's bad. It just means that we might need to change the goal because the behaviors didn't match the goal.
Yeah, or change the behaviors. But if you don't, here's the thing, if you don't have that discussion before, and then you work out together for 6 months, and then they ask you, why didn't I see any results? But you didn't have the expectation or the goal discussion beforehand, you look really stupid, because you effectively, your only answer can be, well, we tried to do what I usually do and it works for a lot of other people, but it didn't work this time for you. Right. But if I can go back and say, well, the expectation was you were going to food journal, you were going to get 7,000 steps a day and be in here 3 days a week. You only got 5,000 steps a day. You food journaled for 2 weeks and you missed half of your workouts. We discussed this in the beginning. Like, it is that's why. So either we need to change the goal, or again, increase the behaviors, or, find a little bit more motivation somewhere. And I think I've talked about the book Motivation Myth before on here. I think it's, I can't remember. His name is Jeff something. The book's Motivation Myth. And he says, he uses exercise and fitness as a lot of his examples, because it's probably the best example for having a lot of motivation at the beginning of the year, or to start something new with my trainer, and then you fall off. And he says motivation's great for like the first 2 weeks. It's the Tony Robbins effect. But after that, like, what's your plan? What's going to get you there? And the best thing you can do from a commitment standpoint is say you and I are working together, like, okay, I, Kevin Carr, am going to work out 3 days a week at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning at 7:30 a.m. in the 7:30 a.m. adult group. I'm going to get 7,000 steps a day, 6 days a week, and I'm going to food journal for the next 3 weeks, right? So, because motivation's going to wane at some point, and you're going to need to always revert back to the plan. And when you have that in writing, it's almost a contract that you write with yourself, or you could write this with your clients. I've done it before. It is you're setting the expectation right from the start. And when it doesn't happen and they don't reach their goals, you can fall back on that. Mm-hmm. Also, you have a written contract that you could hold them. I mean, part of your job as a coach is being an accountability partner. So I can hold you accountable to that. And again, like you said, you're not a bad person if you can't uphold that. It's just in the beginning, we might have went too hard, and we're just going to have to adjust that. We'll move it to 2 days a week and 5,000 steps and change our goals. But yeah, that's a really great book if anyone wants to pick that up, Motivation Myth. It talks all about this commitment and expectation piece.
Add it to the list.
All right, so number 1, we'll find out our whys, our goals. Number 2, logistics and equipment. Number 3 is what's a realistic commitment and expectation. And then number 4 is when you would finally get into the physical assessment and or the physical history of that individual, injuries, their functional movement screen, or the first workout. We did this podcast. I believe it was podcast number 4 on assessments, on a first workout assessment that you take them through. That doesn't even come until you've done the first 3. You would then move to assessment and history. Number 5 would then be write the first draft of the program. So once I know what brought you in here, what your goals are, what equipment you have access to, or the logistics of the current setup where I'm at, what your commitment is and your expectations are, what your physical assessment is telling me, I can then write the first draft. And I say first draft because once you go through this with this person, or they go through it themselves and report back with feedback, you will then write a final draft. So the first workout I write is a rough draft, just like you would write an essay in college. We never want to go back there, but just like you would write an essay in high school, you write a first draft, maybe you write a second draft, and then the third draft or the fourth draft is going to be the final draft of that program. So I won't even have a final program for somebody until I get those first 5 steps.
Yeah. And because, I mean, it's always an evolving workout anyways. Like I always write what I think is going to be what they do, and then we get into it and I'm like, probably maybe overshot their expectation with that one, or maybe I undershot, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to change this. And so it's always like you meeting them where they're at. It is an evolving process right into that first workout, and then even more so, it's an evolving process that you have to continually go back through all these steps again and reassess their expectations, their goals, their willingness, all the things we just talked about as they progress, because these people change as well. And so the workout changes as well as their dedication to it, their availability, their things of that nature. So it's a continual process.
So meeting people where they are is rule number 69 in a wonderful book called Coaching Rules, written by someone you might know, Coach Brendan Rierick. Wes, that's for you.
Rule number 69 is for Wes.
Rule number 69 is for Wes. Creating a plan for your clients that they do for 2 weeks and then quit because it was too difficult is not a good plan. You may not have trouble getting clients, but you'll struggle to keep them. Ask your clients and athletes to tell you about their needs, values, and concerns. Use this information to connect and communicate with them. If they're timid to begin training with you, you're better off recognizing that from the beginning and easing them in through a few phone calls and a gym walkthrough, or inviting them to watch you coach a session. The more you can involve people in developing a plan that fits into their schedule, challenges them just above their current physical and mental abilities, and is sound in its principles, the more enjoyable and sustainable your training will be. People will buy in if they have a say in the process. So that's something we didn't talk about, is when you engage somebody like this and they have a say in it, right? Not just me dictating to them what they can and can't and should do. When they make the decisions for themselves, right? When you ask those open-ended questions, they now have a lot more buy-in to the process. And I'll just finish reading here. Some may view it as coddling, but it's not. It's just understanding. Your client is a human being, not just your next project. Exercise, for whatever reason it's being pursued, is a lifelong endeavor. Set yourself up to be a long-term partner, not a short-term fix. So that's meeting people where they are in a wonderful book called Coaching Rules, a how-to manual for a successful career in strength and fitness. Rule number 69, meet people where they are.
The idea of giving them ownership and making them part of the process, I think, is huge, because so much of coaching traditionally is, I tell you what to do. Why do we do this? Well, because I said so. But in reality, you should be, I like the Megan Pomerensky gave me the saying that we should be a lighthouse, not a tugboat. As a therapist or a coach, like, we're trying to guide them, but we're not trying to drag them along. And when you're a guide to them and they actually want to be doing the things that they're doing, and you say, hey, do you like this exercise? What do you think we should do? Or, hey, how many sets do you think we should do? Or how are you feeling today? How much do you think we should go up? Like, I always ask, like, I already programmed the numbers. But I say, hey, what do you think for the next set? Just to get an idea of, like, how do they feel psychologically about it? Do they feel really good? Like, I had a girl literally today, she's like, no, I think we should go to 75. It's a younger girl. And I was like, all right, let's go for it. And she freaking crushed it. And she was feeling good today. She was excited. She wanted to lift. And so you just asking gives them a little spark of motivation. And so one thing I think is important, whether it's in a rehab setting or a training setting, is planning together. And so you might already have all the data points, the conversations, the assessment, all that stuff, but then you might have already sketched out a program, but say at the next session, okay, this is what I was thinking. What do you think about this? Because they might be like, ooh, I don't know about this. Or you can start to identify where they might not have confidence. Like, I'll say, hey, you want to deadlift today? Well, my last trainer, I hurt my back deadlifting. And then you just identify the fact that, okay, they might have some fear avoidance around that particular movement. How do I have to now talk to them about it to bring them the direction we want them to go? And I spoke about this earlier with you in the book Before Happiness, which I think I recommended before on here, by Sean Aker. And he talks about, he's a positive psychologist, and he talks a lot about finding meaning behind work and positivity at work for people. But you can take these same kind of parallels and draw them right into fitness and rehab. And he said they looked at a study of, like, a bunch of people at work, and the people who found meaning and had meaning markers in their work, so things that were important to them, things they were working hard towards that had personal meaning to them, had 3 times higher level of engagement, happiness, and productivity when their work was centered around things that were personally meaningful to them, or things that they had a personal buy-in on. And people who don't recognize meaning in their work, when they looked at their the biology of these people, they had higher reported levels of stress on a daily basis. They had higher levels of cortisol, and they had higher levels of blood pressure than people who said they didn't find meaning in their work, because their work was inherently stressful. There wasn't a connection to what they were doing. So, like, what do they say? They say, like, stress is where, like, what is it? When people have meaning behind something, it's
they can bear anyhow.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Whatever the saying is. Yeah. When someone has a why, they can bear just about any how.
Yeah. They can bear any struggle. Yeah. When you have passion, a why or a purpose.
The difference between passion and stress is meaning.
Yes.
Right. You could work 80 hours a week for something you really care about, but you don't want to work 40 hours a week for something you think sucks. And then one thing I do, especially in rehab, and I do it in training as well, but I think it's something I really focus on in rehab, is what I call, like, roadmaps and recaps. So again, plan together to what they want, understand what's meaningful to them, Because I was saying like rehab, like they probably don't care about deadlifting. Like trainers are like, oh yeah, this person with back pain deadlifted. Like great, it is probably good for them, but they don't really care about the deadlift. They care about picking up their kids, or they care about hiking, or they care about playing tennis, or whatever it is. So like all the roadmaps should be centered around that, not necessarily the means and the way, because there's a lot of means that you can get them there. And then recaps at the end of the session to say, okay, how do you feel like today went? Because sometimes your impression of the session or the rehab or the workout is much different than that individual. They might have thought it went very poorly, or they thought it went really well, and you might thought different. So let's see if we're on the same page. So you guys are speaking the same language. And then highlight the things that went really well, because we know people tend to prioritize negativity in how they view things, especially in their rear view with the session. So, okay, hey, look at these things that you did really well today. You were able to, bench press the 50s for the first time for 8 reps. And, the ball rollouts looked a little bit better today. And whereas the client might be like, oh, my back was really stiff when I showed up. Like, okay, well, do you feel better after? And so getting them to see those things. So that continues to get you on the same page and continues to keep that ownership for the client, that they feel like they're a part of it. They're not just a passenger in the entire process.
I have nothing to add to that. So let's recap. So when we say meet somebody where they're at, what we mean by that is, 1, find out why they're there. Ask open-ended questions. What brought you here? Why are you here? Why is that important to you? And why does that goal matter? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is equipment access or logistics, because that'll dictate a lot of your programming. And of course, if they're coming to you, that's a little bit easier. But if you're doing it, if you're an online trainer, it's a little bit more difficult. So you have to ask that question, and don't just assume that everybody has the finances to buy or get, or the space, the environment to get whatever you say they need, because they most likely don't. Number 3 is, so what's a realistic commitment and expectation? Like you're saying, what roadmap, right, are we going to be able to make? And do they match number 1? Does it match your whys and your goals? Number 4 is to do that physical assessment and ask previous history, previous experience, all of that. And then number 5 would then be to finally write the first draft of the program with the information that you got from the first 3. So that program theoretically would be meeting them where they're at. And then once you get a bunch of feedback from them, like you were saying, and you finalize it, that's a true, we're meeting this individual where they're at type program. And then from there, it's making adjustments continuously. But always going back to the why and the expectations, and do they need to change along with the behaviors?
Wait, so we just can't give them the workout of the day and tell them they need to survive?
No, you cannot. I mean, you can, and people will pay for that, but it's not a profession. That's not how I want to be looked at in our profession. I don't consider that coaching, to be honest. So I will add that, because we're going to our book topics next, and I'm going to build off of what you said. And Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman talks about transactional coaching versus transformational coaching. So a transactional coach is everything Kevin had said earlier and had just said, right? Here is the workout of the day. Here's what's it on the whiteboard. See you later. I'm going to yell at you, even if you can or can't do it, until you feel bad about yourself, so that you'll come in and do it again later and perhaps get better at it. Okay, that's transactional coaching. I don't actually care about you. All I care about is that you do what I say. That's a transformational coach does the 5 things we just talked about when you meet somebody where you're at. You ask them why, you ask them open-ended questions, you set expectations, you make them part of the plan, you give them feedback, ask for feedback, and you're continually making them part of the process and making adjustments on the fly. So this book, Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman, he was a football coach and a football player.
There you go. Get in front of the camera a little more. There you go.
He was a football player in the NFL, and he was a high school football coach. He shares his story, and then he shares the process that he took his inner city Baltimore football teams through to build the culture, and how he did it as a self-proclaimed transformational coach, as opposed to all the transactional coaches that he had his entire life growing up as a football player.
Yeah, so, pretty unbelievable book.
One of my favorites. I think it was one of the first coaching books I ever read. I think Mike bought all of us this book. That was the first real coaching book that wasn't a training book.
Yeah, we still have the staff read it. The interns read it all the time, because I like the quote that is in there where he says, one of the great myths in America is that sports can build character. It should and can build character, but sports only build character if the coach has it and intentionally teaches it.
Right.
Because it's this idea that, sports teaches great lessons. Well, it can teach great lessons, but it also teaches a lot of bad lessons. You see a lot of bad behaviors in sports for people who might not exhibit the type of character that he talks about in the book. And so if it's not done well, it can be just as detrimental as it is helpful. And so he does a really good job kind of parsing that out in what it really means to coach people, especially if you coach kids, because what's the old NCAA commercial? Like, we have over 150,000 college athletes, and most of them are going pro in something other than sports or something like that. Well, that's true. Most kids will never play a professional sport or even a college sport. And so having the willingness to teach other things, character and respect. We just put up this I should actually post the picture tomorrow. This up on the wall all over the gym. It says MBSC Code of Conduct.
Oh, I saw that. Someone posted it. Mike
I'll read it. I'll read it out right now. Okay. It's really good. Mike saw it somewhere else, and we kind of adapted
while you
it.
Find that.
Yeah.
So I used to highlight all of my books when I opened the book trying to find a certain quote that I wanted to share with everyone. But this is why I stopped highlighting books, because I literally just highlighted the entire book.
I'm a huge highlighter.
I know, but look at this. You literally can't see any of the words. It's just all highlighted. But I do want to say, I opened up to this random page, and it says, to undertake this awesome responsibility, each coach can begin the inside-out journey by asking and answering these 4 key questions. Why do I coach? Why do I coach the way I do? What does it feel like to be coached by me? And how do I define success? I love that third one. What does it feel like to be coached by me?
I love that. So, yeah, that's actually a really good question, because most people don't want to ask that question.
No, but most people do not want to answer that. What's the MBSC Code of Conduct?
Respectful, responsible, ready, the 3 R's. I can always be heard saying please when asking for something. When given something, I always say thank you. Likewise, when someone says thank you, I respond with you're welcome. To politely interrupt, I will say excuse me. I'm always respectful to my parents, instructors, teachers, and coaches. Phrases such as good morning, be safe, how are you, and have a great day are part of who I am. And so we have that up on the doors. We have it up by the locker rooms for the kids, just as like a reminder for them to that, there's a way that we want people to carry themselves in there. Because if you create a culture where that's the norm, then that's how people behave. Whereas if you don't enforce it and you don't expect it and you don't have subtle reminders around for people as well, then you get what comes in the door. And like you said, have to kind of create the culture you want.
If the coach has character and the people that work in your facility or the people who are around you have character, you'll most likely also have character, and you'll impart that character on part of everybody else. So, of course, you can write all those things on the wall, and we can read all these books, and we can say all these things, but do you have the character? Do you do it yourself?
Yeah.
I remember I got asked that question, how do you build, I think you were there with me at a Perform Better event. How do you build culture at your gym? And I remember my answer being like, is if I live my best life and I present myself, like you're saying, character, then that's most likely what you're going to receive back in return. So what book do you got?
My book has nothing to do with coaching.
Perfect.
But this is a really good book. And Exercised by Daniel Lieberman. So he wrote The Story of the Human Body as well.
Oh,
which is a really
I was going to
interesting
say,
book.
what other book did he write? Okay.
Yeah, he's a evolutionary biologist at Harvard. And so the subtitle is Why Something We Never Evolved to Do is Healthy and Rewarding. And I like it because it has a fake cave painting of someone on a treadmill.
I was wondering what was going on.
He's pretty
in that
funny.
picture.
He's a pretty funny guy. But it's interesting because he talks about how exercise is completely against how us evolutionarily.
It's a modern modernity invention.
Yeah, because in everywhere evolutionarily, and still in many cultures that are not modernized, exercise doesn't make sense because the number one, there's still probably food scarcity, and we want to be as economical as possible in maximizing the use of the calories that we do have, and why it's something that we've evolved to do in modern society, and why it can still be great for us and help us be healthier and be enjoyable. And so how essentially with exercise and programming exercise, we're really working against people's evolution. And so again, meeting people where they're at, realize that we're asking people to do something that, years of evolution, thousands and thousands of years of evolution before them has, taken them the other direction. And so understanding that, it goes into a lot of the common discussions that are going on around sitting, around sleeping, around general activity, around running, around lifting weights, and all these different exercises approaches, and kind of the evolutionary background in the research. It's really, really interesting. It's just a good overall interesting read about exercise and physical activity and health. And don't be intimidated by what looks like a really large book. I was highlighting as well.
Look at that.
And so, because it's not actually this copy is 800 pages, but in haste, while I was ordering on Amazon, I didn't realize that I had ordered the large print edition. So this is for old people, which pretty much is me at this point. The letters are really big. And so when I got the book, I was like, why are the letters so big? And then I saw that I had accidentally ordered that. So I was like, well, I'm not going to buy it.
It's so satisfying, though, to flip a page every 3 seconds.
Yeah, you fly through it. So it's very
through
funny.
800 pages.
Yeah, exactly. Because the words are so, but it's very good. So it's all about exercise, aging, different physical activity, things like that. So I would highly recommend it. It's very interesting. He's a great writer. He's funny. And so it gives a really good overall perspective. If you're just interested in exercise, I think it's good. If you're working with people, I definitely think it's good because it gives a pretty broad perspective on lots of things your clients ask about and want to talk about anyways.
All right. Well, we have a lot of level 2 events coming up. I think we have 5. Yeah, we got 5 level 2 events coming up. Yeah. I believe they are Toronto, Philadelphia, Boston, New York, and Chicago. Yes, that's all 5. Right off the top of my head.
Look at those. All the big cities.
All the big cities. So when people ask, what's the difference between level 1 and level 2? All right, so I explain it in 8-week blocks. So phase 1, phase 2, and then maybe phase 3 are 3 to 4 weeks each. So 9 to 12 weeks. That's level 1. Okay. All athletes, no matter your level, all adults start in that level 1, phase 1 through 3 block. That's what CFSC level 1 is. That's what we're teaching you. Now, adults continue on that level 1 path, and we just use movement variability. We change the numbers, change the program, change the conditioning, but they relatively stay in the level 1 philosophy. Adults will. Mm-hmm. Athletes, on the other hand, so 11 to 22, if you're in college, maybe pro, but even then, when we get to the pros, they're already pros. So we kind of just keep them on level 1 because they're already really good and we don't want to hurt them. That level 2 is going to be phases 3, 4, and 5. So that's weeks 12 through 16 or 9 through 20 or whatever. All right, so that's the second half. So if we break level 1 up into 9 weeks, we break level 2 up to 9 weeks, that's 18 total weeks. So where it's just a progression on level 1. So we now are Olympic lifting. We are now doing much more advanced medicine ball drills and plyometric drills. We now have more hops and bounds, which in level 1, we really only do jumps. And we're doing a lot more barbell lifting. The conditioning is also more advanced. We now have slide board conditioning, and we have a lot more sled work, and we have a lot more sprints. So we have all of our sprinting plyometric progressions in level 2. Level 1 is pretty much just box jump and maybe vertical jump in place. And there's no Olympic lifting in level 1. And I don't know if I'm missing anything there. So really, level 1 and level 2 is distinguished between phases 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 for level 1. Adults just continue on level 1. Athletes will go to level 2. That's how I explain it.
Yeah, and I really just say, like, level 2 really just covers the entire sports performance program that we use at MBSC. So building, like you said, on top of what is basic training fundamentals for anybody. Learning to squat, learning to hinge, learning to push, learning to pull. We did that in level 1. Level 2 is 2 full days instead of 1 day. And it needs to be 2 full days for 2 reasons. 1, there's just more content. It takes just longer. There's no way. We tried to do the first one in 1 day, and it was exhausting. And we were there till like 8 p.m. And it takes a while to learn the things. You realize when we teach a lot of these courses, you have a lot of personal trainers who probably aren't doing a lot of the strength and conditioning, athletic development type movements because they're probably training in a normal facility. They're maybe just working with office workers, and that's awesome. But they're not sprinting. They're not doing change of direction and agility drills. They're not doing lots of hops and bounds and more advanced medicine ball throws. And they're probably not Olympic lifting that often. And so the learning curve is a little bit longer. And that what we do in the level 2 course that has been really helpful is the first day, we teach all the attendees like they're athletes. I don't even ask them to do much coaching. I say, today we're going to review all this stuff and I'm going to treat you like my group. I'm just going to give you more details. And I'm going to talk about it like the perspective of a coach, but you are going to practice on yourself. I don't care about you coaching anybody else, because if you haven't physically done it, it's going to be very hard for you to teach it. And if you can't do something that looks like a 5-10-5 or a crossover or an acceleration drill, it's going to be really hard to teach somebody else. And then they sleep on it for the night, right? When you sleep, you myelinate, you build neurons, you solidify motor patterns. Then they come back the next day, they're always better. It's actually unbelievable. They're tired and they're sore. You're going to be tired and sore after 2 days of level 2.
Level 2 is way more physically taxing, both for us and for you.
Yeah, I'm going to say.
Yeah, not just for the attendees.
Do the stuff to know that I have to teach it. But they come back on the second day and they're way better at doing all of those things. And then I'm like, okay, now we're going to do a bunch of breakouts and you're going to coach. And then we're going to group up and talk about what went well, what didn't go well. And we're going to talk about different contextual issues when we might apply it differently for you in your setting. and it works really well over the course of 2 days. And so we do a lot of speed development stuff. We do a lot of agility stuff, plyo med ball. We do conditioning. There's a lecture the day of as well, whereas level 1, it's all practical when you're there. And so it's just a little more in depth. And I always say it's good for the personal trainer who might not have, like, be a strength conditioning coach, right? But you still want to learn hang cleans. You still want to learn plyos and med ball progressions and understand all these things in conditioning, especially for the Gen Pop client. So I think it extends beyond, being a collegiate strength coach or a high school strength coach or a professional strength coach, because you develop a lot of skills that can be applied pretty much to anyone. It's just much more intensive, as you mentioned. So we do have a lot of those coming up. I think the closest one coming up is Philadelphia. It's a level 1
Toronto.
Level 2 combo. Oh, Toronto, yeah, May 28th and 29th in Toronto. Yeah, we have like 3 weeks in a row. So
Yeah.
May 28th and 29th, we have 27, 28, 29, level 1, level 2 in Toronto. June 3rd, 4th, and 5th, level 1, level 2 in Philadelphia. June 11th and 12th is just the level 2 in New York City. July 8th, 9th, and 10th, level 1, level 2 in Woburn. And then fast forward to Chicago, August 26th, 27th, 28th, level 1, level 2 in Chicago. So we have a bunch of them coming up. So definitely, if you're interested, we offer combo pricing for all of those. You get a discount if you sign up for both if you haven't done anything. We have early bird specials on all those. So I would definitely look into that if you're interested. I know we've had a lot of people asking for us to do more level 2s, so we're trying to make a concerted effort of that over the summer.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening. It was great chatting with you, Kev. And I'll see you for episode number 14.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.